There's a stigma around low-income housing, is there not? I don't know where it started. I don't really care to know. But what we need to finally do is wrap our arms around it and have an honest discussion. This is a good format for this, and figure out maybe if we can grab some of the top, 4 or 5 most common myths that people seem to carry and lug around with them around income housing. Because guess what, gang? We've got a problem with a lack of available housing for what you might consider to be low, and we're going to blow up actually what low income even means. I'm excited to get to that too, chomping at that bit, for folks in San Diego County. And if we don't address this, it's one of those things, it's like you're either on its train or you're on its tracks. So gang, we've got you might say a local legend, superstar in the making anyway.
Wow.
First time on radio anyway.
That was a great intro. Love that.
Nicki
Thank you.
Cometa, she's in here from the Affirmed Housing game. You can learn more about them and what they're doing over at affirmedhousing.com. Flanked by 3-time superstar in Truth Radio, Joel Incorvaia at incorlaw.com. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Very happy to be here.
Hanging out. Apparently I'm the only one that claps around here, Adrian. Thanks for the support. Nicki, let's get right into this. So I want to start blowing these things up. If you can sort of put a frame around this, I think affordable housing benefits the entire community. It's not just the people that are taking advantage of the program. It's benefiting everybody. So can we blow up some of these myths that people are lugging around them? What's the first most insidious myth that we want to get out out of the gate?
Well, the one that you were just mentioning a little bit is, okay, how did this kind of start? And a lot of that is the vision that everybody thinks of when they think of low-income housing or affordable housing.
The projects.
The projects, those ones that you hear about in Chicago or New York. That look and that feel is not what it is today. Over the last 20 years, things have just changed, and it is very important that these communities look like the rest of the community. These are clean, architecturally appealing. They're beautiful communities. As we've got over 24 projects that we've done in San Diego County, and every one of them is spectacular. You could never tell that they're not just the regular community. They're not visually any different. They blend.
Well, and I would even venture to poke at that a little bit and say, isn't it true that they're technically a little better?
Absolutely. We actually have to build to a higher standard. So we have to build above code. So if someone's just doing an apartment building, they're building to code. We actually have to do better than that, because these communities are built to be sustainable for a much longer period. We really look at 55 years plus. They've got to withstand the green measures. We put solar. There's many features that we end up adding that's very costly, but very good for the long-term tenants and the viability of the project.
And that's important, not just for the community, which I guess you might say is sort of the overarching premise for the show, but it's also important because, it's not just a private sector project, right? I mean, we're using public funds to create these, right? That's
the key here. This used to be just government-owned projects. When you think of the HUD projects back in the day, These are private-public partnering. So there's private funds, tax credit funds from private investors. So this is an unbelievably collaborative effort, and everyone's in it to make these sustainable and viable for the community.
So can we blow this myth up, Joel, once and for all? Affordable low-income housing looks like slum-like, project stuff with the graffiti-covered walls and stuff like that.
Well, clearly they don't, and I've been working with Affirmed Housing Group and other developers in the affordable housing field for over 25 years, and actually some of the nicest apartment projects I've ever seen are the ones that they build, and Nicki's correct. If you drive by an affordable housing project, low-income housing project, there's not a sign on the front of the project that says low-income tenants here. This is cheap housing. It looks very, very nice. And in fact, my daughter and son-in-law recently moved into a affordable housing project in Carlsbad in the Aviera neighborhood, which is probably one of the priciest parts of Carlsbad. And the project they live in is beautiful, and it blends perfectly into the local community, so you wouldn't even know that it's any different than a typical market rate apartment project.
And that's because they're built to not only, you would argue, the same standards, but even higher standards in this capacity than if just someone developer is going to come in and make some kind of apartment building to code.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because when a local government gives you money for a project like this, they want to make sure it's going to be there for
Absolutely.
50 years, because that's how long you're supposed to keep it low income. And they want to make sure that it's something that's sustainable and beautiful and will be well maintained. And they actually have very high maintenance requirements. It's not just construction
Absolutely.
requirements, but the requirements for maintenance are very high, and they're scrutinized on a yearly basis by whatever agency is supervising the project.
Can you throw the clay pigeon up for me in the air, please, Joel? Just go ahead. Throw it up there.
Okay, there it goes.
Okay, that one's done. See, I had to go to the board. It's too much fun right there. Okay, let's get into this. So the little sister to the whole visual thing are the people actually using the program and living in it, right? So another myth I always hear folks say is, I don't want, welfare people on government assistance scrubbing around in my neighborhood, right?
Yeah, and I heard that one too. It's absolutely out there. It's definitely a myth, because these people are working. They're the families that are raising their kids, usually working very locally in that area, but perhaps there wasn't affordable rents. And here they are now. They can actually work and live in the same community. And these people, have, even if you look at minimum wage. I mean, there are a lot of minimum wage jobs out there. Let's say $10 an hour. That's people earning $21,000. It's not a lot of money, but they're working, and so they need somewhere to go like this and pay the rent that really coincides with their income.
Now, this is just a dumb one. I'm moving on this one quick, because I feel like it's kind of like it's a form of prejudice, obviously, right? But it's that idea that just because you're in a certain income or socioeconomic class, I'm better than you, you are lesser than me, and you kind of shove those people off into the corner. And I can't wait we're going to get this in the next segment, the actual income requirements. You're going to be shocked at how many people are leaving this program on the table, right, who could probably take advantage of some of these programs, and the actual income levels that are required to be able to introduce themselves into this conversation. I'm chomping at the bit of that. But what about the concept? Let's just let's tickle on this a little bit. Like, do affordable housing projects increase the local crime rate?
No, that's been proven not to be the case day in and day out. It actually lowers crime. There's public and private uses of area that we actually have to build into the community. So we don't make alleys. We don't, there's definitely a very design-minded way that we have to incorporate the area. So there's no places for crime to happen. So it's very top of the mind in our design when we look at this. And these people are family type people, or seniors, or they could be singles, but they're working and doing the right thing. And we have a very we have a compliance that we look at, and we vet everybody out. They have to pass background checks and that sort of thing.
And that's the point I was going to get to too. So once they're in the project, are they in indefinitely?
No. Every year or so, they have to submit tax returns and other information to show what their income is. So let's say your income doubles or triples a year or two after you move into the project, then you may not qualify to live there anymore. And when your lease expires, you may have to move out. So it's meant to make sure that the tenants are always people that really need this type of housing. And unfortunately, for some people, if they do have a big increased income, they may have to ultimately leave. But then that opens up the housing for other people that do qualify and have a greater need for it. And as Nicki said, there's quite a bit of vetting that goes on in terms of looking for tenants that qualify. And these projects are not filled with gang members and people with long criminal histories. That completely is a myth. They're just basically working families that don't make more than typically 60% of the area average or median income.
And there's a big heuristic that's sort of built into this that we're dancing around, which is that you want to be part of this program. Like, if you get in, you don't take this for granted. You have an opportunity to live in Aviara, for example, where what would, like, for example, I'm not going to put your hand on the flame for this, but like how much your daughter's paying versus how much she would have to pay for a private apartment, same size, right next door.
I would say in Aviara, they're paying less than 50% of what a market rate apartment would go for. I have no idea what the rents are in that neighborhood, but I would say for a 2-bedroom, like they live in, it'd be at least $2,000 or $2,500 a month.
That's the average in San Diego right now for a 2-bedroom, or just for apartments, $2,000 a month.
And their rent is 50% of that.
Yeah.
And it really helps because they're a working family. They have a couple different jobs, but they're just not up there that higher level of income yet. They're newly married with a baby and another one on the way, and they're just the perfect candidates for this type of housing because it's given them the opportunity to have their own place to live.
So they took the time to get vetted. They went through the process. They got accepted into the program. They're in there. They're paying 50 to 60% off market rates. Do you think they're going to be of a high risk to be caught, causing a problem in the neighborhood or messing around or doing drugs in the back? Like, absolutely not. It's the opposite, is it not?
Yeah, actually, they're probably a welcome addition to the neighborhood, and they're not those kinds of people. They're just like you and me, really. Like what I was when I got out of law school and made $20,000 a year.
No, Joel, we don't want to talk about your college years, okay? That's a whole different show.
That's another segment, right?
That was a different century, though.
And I don't think we'd be able to air that, if you know what I mean. Hey, gang, that's Joel Incorvaia, and you can catch him at incorlaw.com. That's INCOR law.com. Joel, appreciate you so much for being here, for all of your extensive knowledge around this topic, flanked by your partner in crime, Nicki Cometa at the Affirmed Housing Group. You can catch them at affirmedhousing.com. But we're just getting started, gang. So coming up, the thing I want to try to do, if you'll allow me, is dig down into those numbers and get really clear about exposing the myth that you have to be poor to qualify for these affordable housing projects, and that if one comes into your neighborhood, it's going to automatically ruin all the property values germane to that neighborhood. This is Truth Radio, gang. We'll be right back.